On the schedule, so I'm going to skip through the rest of this video and let's get on to the. Thank you, those who just joined us out there in the real world online. Welcome to the May 2019 public meeting. Peter Aylward. I'm going to whiz through a little bit. We're going to click it tonight. Click, so there's it. Click. Okay, so we just had the AGM, so that was exciting. So what I thought I'd quickly whiz through what we're going to do tonight, just do a bit of roundup of Space Association business, what we've been working on and things that are coming up. Then we're going to have a monthly presentation on the countdown to Apollo 11. This time we're looking at Apollo 10. We're going to have a quick little break. We might have a visit from somebody you'll see the flyer on your table. We'll talk about that in a minute. There might be a special guest speaker on that in a couple of minutes. Just a second. And then we're going to be going, after the break, we're going to go to our space industry update with Angelo de Grazia. And then our Planetary Science update with Andrew. And then we'll be out of here, possibly around 10, maybe a bit after. That's recent. Okay, so we don't need to do that. We've done that. That's good. Okay, so as people are well aware, we have got the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11 coming up in July, and there's a lot of stuff happening, and we're working on stuff as a group ourselves in partnership with others, and also there's a lot of other things happening as well. So we're going to give a quick update on all of that. So as people probably aware, the Sun Theatre in Yarraville has this Moon Film Festival, which runs from the 16th to the 25th of July. Royal Aeronautical Society and the American Institute of Astronautics and Aeronautics have partnered with us for an event on July 10. I'll give you details on that in a moment. I haven't got any progress on the Rage thing or the Slow TV, but other people are working on that, so I'll let you know if we get any traction there. And the big gala event for us on the 21st, so we're going to have details on that. So this Sun Moon Film Festival, Sun Theatre in Yarraville, myself and Michael have been out there a couple of times, and the guy that owns it, Michael Smith, he's a real go-getter, adventurer, loves space, and he's putting together, finalising a range of films, space-related films. These are films that were listed for the last few months, but he's hopefully this week finalising the list, and it's going to have a lot of really cool things. Apollo 11 film, and also hopefully Armstrong as well. about descent to landing summary, which happened in real time earlier in the morning, out of the TV, Neil walking down the ladder, etc., etc. Now this material that we've got hold of is fantastic because it uses the latest version of the upgraded video. They did what's the word I'm searching for? They reprocessed and enhanced restored the TV signals as it was broadcast. What this thing does though is really cool. It actually inserts in real time, exact moment where Neil and Buzz were taking pictures on the moon. So you'll see them wandering around, someone will stop and click the picture that they took in high res is going to come up on the screen. It's fantastic. It's really nice. It's got all the audio. It's got the soundtrack from Mission Control and the loops, etc. So it's a really cool use of the technology and the environment. So it's going to be a really fun afternoon. It's going to be a long afternoon. It's going to go once again. It's going to be real time. We might have a couple of pieces of intro and outro presentation, etc. Once again, we're not sure about this, but we might. I think my battery's going. Yes. So the Apollo 11 movie might be shown on that night. Maybe not. I'm not sure yet. So we've already set up the concept of it. It's going to be once again an afternoon. It's going to be a nice theatre at the Sun Theatre, the Barclay Cinema, which is the largest one there. I think it holds about 190 maximum. So there's going to be a ticket, as you can see on the screen, $35 for non-members, $27 for members, and that will include basically finger food for the afternoon, a couple of drinks, non-alcoholic drinks, coffee, etc., etc. If you want to buy other alcoholic drinks or other drinks, you can buy them at bar prices. And for non-members, the Sunday is going to make a $5 donation back to the association for that. So they're going to take care of all the ticketing. We've got this beautiful cinema. I know we've been to Yarraville. It's a fantastic location. So we think it's going to be a really lovely afternoon. So once the links and all the codes get set up, which is going to be happening in the next week or so, we'll be pushing that out. And we strongly encourage you or friends and friends to come along. Okay, if your friends want a member, don't worry about it. Use the code, buy them a ticket. All right? We're not that fussy, but we just want lots of people. It's going to be a really fun afternoon, I think. This is the cinema, and this is what it's going to look like. But we think there might be more people than that, so hopefully. That should be a fun afternoon. And Michael Smith and his whole team, they're fantastic. They're really supportive. He's got a moon rover. He's got stuff he's building and things he's making. He's going to have, but it's like a lot of stuff is not happening like this. They don't have it off screen, etc. for a long period of time. So the way that they've done it with the integration of the pictures and things really makes it much more enlivening. So yeah, it's a long afternoon, but I think it's going to be cool. Full confession, this is not our original idea. The guys up in Canberra, which I think Len and maybe a couple other people are going up to, they did that on the 40th anniversary up in Canberra, and that was a really nice event because the people in the room were actually some of the people that were actually working on the day, twiddling the dials and doing the knobs. But yeah. Well, they always said the 40th was going to be the biggest and the last because we'll get too old. And here they are 10 years later. There wasn't a whole lot we could see happening in Melbourne, so we think it's going to be it's going to be a good profile for the association. We might get a little bit of money out of it, and it could be a bit of fun too, I think. So once again, on the 10th of July, once again in partnership with us, the American Institute of Astronautics and Aeronautics, and the Engineers Australia, and the RAES, Royal Aeronautical Society, they're going to be doing a talk by John Circassian from Parkes, and his title will be Dishing Up the Data. So Parkes and Apollo 11. So it should be an interesting afternoon. John's a really lovely guy, and it should be quite a good afternoon, or evening I should say. So this is the ticketing page here. I'm not going to put a big long URL for you, but if you go to it's Eventbrite and do a search on Dishing Up Data, you'll come straight to it. We'll probably put a link on our website for that as well. So it's a free event, but you do need to register. So that goes 6 to 9:30 p.m. and that's in the city. near where we used to meet actually. Swanson Academic Building. And this is John and his dish. So John's actually standing closer to up the camera than the dish, so the dish is a lot bigger than John, just to make sure you fully understand. Okay, other things that are happening. The association has been invited to do a talk at the Glenroy Library, and Andrew Rennie is going out for that. That'll be the 18th, July 18th, 7:30 to 8:30. Andrew's promising a very interactive and entertaining presentation, so we look forward to hearing about that. And as we've mentioned several times over the last months, the big event in Canberra, a number of people going up for that. Go to this website, you'll find out all the details of it. I don't know where they are. You know, John, if there's any progress on these statues or monuments that they were talking about? Len? Any progress on these statues or monuments? No, I haven't either. Hope they got a bit of funding for things, but we're not sure what progressed there. Another thing that's happening in Australia, although it's a fair way away, it's over in Carnarvon in WA, they're doing quite a big thing over there. So they're going to have a cocktail party on the 20th, and there'll be some ex-trackers discussing their time there, some entertainment, etc., etc. So their cost for that is $50 per person, and available from the visitors centre. So I don't know whether anyone's been there. Has anyone been over there for that? I haven't. It's a long way away, but it looks really good. I think they've got a fair bit of state government and also local government investment in what they're doing there. So that's quite good. And I don't know whether people have seen this on the left here. Unfortunately, the clicker's run out of battery. On the left, there was an original fountain that was done back in the 60s during the heyday of Carnarvon. So one of the projects for this anniversary is they're building a new one, a replica of it. So they've been posting updates of that progress there. So that's really lovely. So apparently the Gemini capsule squirts out water at the back. So I love it. We should do one of those. All right, so I'll just do a quick little promo video that they've got there.
On July 20, 1969, we heard this.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And 50 years later, we'll be celebrating once again at the Carnarvon Space and Technology Museum. Relive Carnarvon's role, which helped NASA get man on the moon with a special cocktail party. There'll be special guests, live music, stargazing, and more. Tickets on sale now from the Carnarvon Visitor Centre.
Okay, so in case you're geographically challenged, or you think I might just jump in the car and drive over, this is where we are. This is where it is. So it's it's not an afternoon drive. So, but if you're over there, or you know people over there, get up there, because I think it'd be fantastic. Yeah, not far for you in a spacecraft. A couple of minutes. Okay, so after a lot of mucking around and iterations, we've come up with a commemorative design for the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission. And what we've decided to do is that if you're a current member of the Space Association of Australia, not left from the car, I think, you'll get one of these cups. I'll left from the car, I'll get it at half time. So one of these cups, so what we're going to do is if you remember, as of July 1 of 2019, we'll do a production run of those, and if you're in Melbourne, in Victoria, and hopefully you can pick it up, we'll bring them along here for collection. And if you're interstate, overseas or whatever, they'll be sent to you based on the current postal address in your profile in the membership. In addition to that, we will have a merchandise page set up, and the way that works is that the templates for this stuff will go up on that virtual shop, and anyone from around the world can go in and order a shirt, a cap, a t-shirt or whatever, and it gets made for them. They pay online, it gets shipped to them. The association gets a little bit of income from that as well. So we thought that might be a nice way for people to have a commemorative thing that basically is unique to Australia. It obviously tells a story of Australia's involvement. This is, if people are not aware, this is the dish at Honeysuckle Creek that actually took the first few minutes of the moonwalk, including the moment when Neil stepped on the moon. That dish is actually now physically down at Tidbinbilla. And of course this is the Lunar module, and this is symbolising the partnership between the US and Australia. I've got a sample t-shirt over it, which I've done as well. Okay, so our meetings, once again, we're counting. Every time we do this, obviously the numbers get fewer, so next meeting we June 24. 24, yep, so fourth Monday of the month apart from December. I think we've locked in December meetings, is that right, Mike? 15th?
Yes.
Yep, okay. Okay, obviously the association runs on membership, and so we would hope that you'd be encouraged to retain your membership, maybe come along and join up, and get somebody else along to join up. It'd be lovely, and you get a cup as well, commemorative cup. Tim's unfortunately not here tonight, but once again you can go to a website and do the whole thing online, pay online, etc, etc. Alright, so that's the business up to this stage. So we'll get on to the feature event, the countdown to the moon. Just give me a couple of minutes to change presentations and we're good to go. How are we doing on time, Mike? Oh, sorry, one last thing, sorry. There's on your table there's this Star Show event, which is happening on the 15th of June at the Deakin Edge in Federation Square. So it looks like it's going to be really cool. It's a sound and visual spectacular. Pink Floyd, War of the Worlds, ELO, Queen, etc, etc. So it's basically a bunch of musicians doing things, and it's presented by Perry Vlahos from the Astronomical Society of Victoria. So it should be quite a good day. And we also have for members a discount code. So if you go to their booking page and use the code, I wrote it on a piece of paper which I've misplaced somewhere. The code is SAA20. When you make your booking, you get a 20% discount on that. So we'll send that out in an email shortly, but that should be quite a really nice evening by the looks of it. Yeah, SAA20.
Just in relation to that.
Get the mic and I've just changed presentations.
In relation to the Star Show, there is also going to be a performance earlier in the afternoon by the same musician as Matthew Pagan. Matthew was here earlier in the evening. Some of you may have seen him. He was the one with the crutches. And that's going to be Spanish music. He plays flamenco guitar. So that will be there. On my website, on the Space Show website, I have an interview with Perry Vlahos, who's the astronomer involved in the Star Show, and an interview with Matthew Fagan. Now, I broadcast Perry's talk last Wednesday, and in 2 days' time I'm going to be broadcasting Matthew's interview about the Star Show. But if you can't wait, it's already on the website and you can download it from there.
And just on that last week's show, for some reason they had a technical issue, so the live stream didn't work, and subsequently the podcast of the entire show is not there. But I believe the individual interviews would be, is that correct?
Oh, okay. The interviews are up on the website.
Okay, so the interviews are on the website. Okay, I'm going to whiz through because we are sort of behind time, so I'm just going to pick up on our theme. We're going back in time 50 years, we're calling it Apollo plus 50, Apollo 11 plus 50. And the title of the presentation is Footsteps to the Moon, the Countdown to Apollo 11. So the series, as we've spoken about, looks at the progress each month up to the July 1969 landing, summarising the events of that particular month. And once again, culminated in our July meeting. So we've basically been having feature meetings corresponding to missions that took place, and tonight is Apollo 10. In between those, we've had other features, and we've had last month we had a focus on the Australian involvement in the Apollo 11 or Apollo missions, and we've had a couple of other presentations on training, etc. So in June, Andrew Rennie is going to be doing a presentation on the decision to use Lunar Orbit Rendezvous, the architecture of the Apollo missions, which end up being adopted. So it's quite an interesting story, and Andrew says it's like a real detective story, so looking forward to that. So that's June, so don't miss that. But tonight we look at Apollo 10. That's the logo, and but first of all we have to go back to 1969 and stand by. We're going to do that now. Okay, so I've just got the right turn off. Okay, so as we normally do, we'll take a look at the events happening around the world in 1969. In May the 6th, of course, the Vietnam War was raging, so there were 34 servicemen killed and 35 injured when a helicopter crash had a mechanical failure. Winnie Mandela, the wife of Nelson Mandela, was arrested for basically violating Suppression of Communism Act. She spent 16 months in prison, and the US Navy Weapons Center began its classified Project Gulf Q, a series of weather modification experiments in conjunction with the Naval Weather Research Facility. Never knew that until I did this research, so there you go. Other things that are happening in the world, the 1,710,000th and last Chevrolet Corvair, it was Corvair Monza, a sports car, was produced. And over in the Soviet Union, the Venera 5 space probe landed on Venus but ceased transmitting after 43 minutes. A US Air Force mechanic stole a Hercules from the RAF Middlehall in England and flew the plane past the Isle of Wight in an apparent attempt to return to his home in the US. After a 2-hour flight, he told his wife they had trouble with the automatic pilot and the aircraft was presumed lost. So anyway, he went off the planet a bit there. Mario Andretti won his first and only Indianapolis 500 race. Top 10. Where do you go to, my lovely?
Where do you go to, the Beatles?
I know, the Beatles have dropped right down to number 10. Poor old Beatles. But look at those classics. Proud Mary, Creedence, the Hollies. There we go. Anyway, okay, let's look at spacecraft. That's what we're really here to talk about. Okay, so May the 1st, the Apollo 11 spacecraft assembly is hoisted for mating to the launch vehicle. So once again, May of 69. Apollo 10 hasn't launched yet, on the 1st of May anyway. The Apollo 12 first stage was just delivered, all wrapped up nicely. The Apollo 10 was on the pad at 39W, we saw that last month, and they did their countdown demonstration test. They're running through the whole launch procedure, etc. Looking beyond Apollo 10, workers were preparing for the rollout later in May of the Saturn V for the Apollo 11 mission out to 39A. Apollo 10 was on 39B, as you might recall. They connected the spacecraft to testing. Elsewhere, the VAB, they were stacking the Apollo 12, etc., and the upper two stages were on the way. So a lot of stuff happening around the VAB. During the countdown demonstration test, managers gave the final approval to fly a colour television system on the command module in Apollo 10. Engineers modified a black and white Westinghouse camera with a colour wheel. They even added a little monitor. So that's your GoPro in 1969. Wouldn't want to be strapping that to your forehead. Okay, so Apollo 10, May 18, they were going to go. So here's Tom Stafford wearing his suit, getting shown a pennant. Snoopy and Charlie Brown were the mascots for the lunar module and command module. And they were preparing to leave the manned spacecraft operation building. You see them with Snoopy, and then they're off to the pad there. So they finally launch. Apollo 10 is off. 12:49 p.m. The first launch from Pad 39B at the Cape Complex 39.
And the only manned launch.
From 39, of the Saturn V.
From B.
Yeah, but they did shuttles from B.
The only manned launch.
They did manned flights from B.
Manned Apollo.
Oh, manned Apollo, yeah. Did they, the Saturn 1Bs went off A, did they?
They definitely use that.
Yes, sorry. For,
No, the 1As
Skylab they did.
for Skylab.
Mm.
So which
On
pad
the,
did they use then?
milk
Tim would know that. Yeah, the milk store.
Yeah,
Okay, May the 20th, okay, they just cleared the way with Apollo 10, and a couple of days later out rolls Apollo 11. So they've got all the bits and pieces. They've got the latest cars and the helicopter and things, they're ready to go. So you can see it pushing up the slowly, you can see all the nice smoke from the engines, the diesels. So that's out 39A. 25th, with Apollo 10 the way back and Apollo 11 being readied, the Apollo 12 commander was practicing EVA activities in the vacuum chamber. Okay, so we're just looking at administrative type things. Now, May the 2nd, a temporary fix to provide S2 stage early centre cutoff was made for Apollo 10 and 11. So you might recall Apollo 9, they had a problem with that. So they were trying to eliminate these oscillations of the centre engine. So they were making plans to incorporate the permanent fix into Apollo 12. So there was a temporary fix for 10 and 11, and Apollo 12 was going to have the permanent fix. May the 8th, the Apollo program director Sam Phillips suggested that a meeting be held during the period of the return to flight to Earth to review the status of experiment support facilities and overall plans for science support missions during the lunar missions. May the 9th, you can see how they're looking at, there's so many things happening here. They're looking at a plan for the Apollo 15 lunar surface science project, looking at the LSEP array. So basically they wanted a replacement for that because it was an issue for it. The May 15 go ahead, they could be made 1 year from that date to deliver to the experiment package. So you can see they're looking way ahead of trying to get up to the moon. So a lot of stuff going on. May the 13th, a NASA policy released of manned spaceflight communications was outlined. Policy released all air-to-ground conversations in real time. However, if circumstances arose in which a crew or mission director requested private conversation, the public information officer responsible for the mission commentary would be notified and would monitor the conversation with the mission director. A summary would be released at the discretion of the public affairs. Tapes of the air-to-ground would not be released. May the 20th, the head of the Soviet Cosmonaut Corps, Nikolai Petrovich Kamin, notes that the Apollo 10 mission is 10 times greater achievement than the Venera missions being trumpeted by the Soviet media. So they were having those individual discussions. Where's Igor, by the way? He's been big for ages. He'd know all about that. 27th of May, Apollo program director Sam Phillips again wrote to Manned Spaceflight Centre regarding the flight readiness review action on the trans-lunar injection dispersion. So basically, what they were looking at what the possibility of using manual control if there was a problem with the automated system and whether it would be acceptable. So he stated that fuel reserves of Apollo 10 were such that the dispersion seemed acceptable, and he would have permitted the use of the manual guidance if the TLI, if it had been needed. However, he pointed out the margins of Apollo M would be much less, and it would be necessary to reduce the dispersions or limit the use of the capability. So obviously they're thinking ahead of what could possibly be going wrong. 27th, Marshall Space Flight Centre was authorised to proceed with the development of a manned lunar roving vehicle, beginning in 1971. Meeting was scheduled for June 6 in Washington to establish the requirements for the development of the vehicle. All right, let's have a look at the mission. We've got this direct from NASA just 2 days ago.
May 18th, 1969. We were almost ready. Man had orbited the moon once. Man had test flown the lunar module, the lunar landing craft, in Earth orbit once. But before we would commit men to a lunar landing, there were still a number of things to be worked out. This was the mission of Apollo 10. In the words of its commander, Tom Stafford, to sort out all the unknowns and pave the way for a lunar landing. It was a veteran crew. Spacecraft Commander Tom Stafford had flown on Gemini 6 and 9. Lunar Module pilot Gene Cernan had flown with Stafford on Gemini 9. John Young had been on Gemini 3 and Gemini 10. They would face problems on Apollo 10, problems that would be solved for Apollo 11. Most would be minor, but they would be solved. Stafford, Young, Cernan. They brought to their mission enthusiasm, dedication, responsibility, even amazement. And through the means of color television, they took us with them as they played their part in man's greatest adventure.
We are go for a mission to the moon at this time. Tom Stafford reports they are go. We're coming up in the 20-second mark. T-minus 20 seconds and counting. 17 seconds and counting. Guidance internal. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. We have ignition sequence start. Engines on. 5, 4, 3, 2. All engines running. Launch commit. Liftoff. We have liftoff 49 minutes past the hour.
Good ignition on the second stage.
Man, that staging was quite a sequence. Just like old times. It's beautiful out there.
You guys sound ecstatic.
Man, this is the greatest journey.
Apollo 10 was headed for its initial parking orbit around the Earth. After the checkout in orbit, it was time for TLI, trans-lunar injection, the burn of the S-4B engine to send Apollo 10 to the moon.
7 minutes carried up.
Roger 10, you're go for TLI. S4B's looking as planned.
Right on. Chico!
Roger, Pico. We confirm the cutoff.
Apollo 10, with a perfect burn, was on its way to the moon. Now, the command and service module separated from the S-4B and turned around to dock with the lunar module. For the first of many times, Tom Stafford turned on the small, high-resolution color television camera and shared with the people of Earth the spectacular sights of outer space. Apollo 10 took along all those who had made and were making the conquest of the moon a reality.
Charlie, we can't be more than about 5-10 feet away.
Roger. 10 is looking real stable to us. We show you closing slightly.
Roger. Be docked in a second, I hope.
Roger. 10, Houston, you're looking good. We can see the markings in a rendezvous with it. Looks like you just docked.
Roger, we got a capture. You haven't fired yet.
Roger.
Snap, snap, and we're there. Got 2 grays.
Roger.
You saw the docket, Charlie.
Gene, we can read the numbers on the limb docking window.
During the docking, Apollo 10 encountered its first problem. The mylar containing the insulation on the spacecraft hatches had broken, releasing a snowstorm of fiberglass in the zero gravity.
Hey, we're going to have a heck of a cleaning job here. They had insulation all in the seal, all in the valve, and it's really a heck of a mess up here.
For Apollo 11, it would be fixed. Then we watched as they pulled free of the S-4B and got our first live color pictures of the blue planet Earth.
Charlie, this is it's so hard to describe. You can go right up past Alaska and you can see the polar caps. It's incredible. Well, we see it all here, Gene. Its colors are really beautiful. That's great. And the blackest black that you ever could conceive is the setting for all this. Right.
So Stafford, Young, and Cernan began their coast away from Earth, their speed continually dropping as the arms of Earth's gravity tried to pull them back. To control the temperature of the spacecraft, they performed a slow, steady rotation.
Yeah, it sounds like shortly we'll soon be about 55,000 miles out, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Sounds like a long way from home, Joe.
It was time to continually check the trajectory and the spacecraft. The command module, call sign Charlie Brown, the lunar module, Snoopy. It was time for conversation, and it was time for showing the people at home on the Earth what space travel is like.
And I feel for one thing, you have your choice. If you don't like things right side up, you can go upside down.
I just do whatever he says.
Roger, down here. Okay, we got one of you in each direction.
That's the only way to fly.
Farther and farther from Earth, Stafford, Young, and Cernan flew on their wingless flight. Now, off the rotating home planet, day and night became only a progression of minutes as the spacecraft rotated at 3 revolutions an hour.
Okay, we're about to finish that ambulance thing, and we're going to psych out. Okay, and tomorrow we should be around the moon.
Roger.
Reveille, up all hands, heave out, price up. Clean sweep down, fore and aft.
Apollo 10, Houston, sounds like we're ready for a naval drill in the flight deck.
And here is your horoscope reading for today, Apollo 10. Tom Stafford, you should concentrate on finishing things that you have already started. Today's pace will be moderate. Use this time to take inventory. John Young, you will have a slow day today. This will give you time to concentrate on the work ahead. You will enjoy your surroundings and companions.
And Gino, your horoscope reads, give careful thought to your working and driving habits. Do something nice for your friends.
The crew of Apollo 10 was getting ready for lunar orbit. Checklists gone over, clocks synchronized, computers updated. As the time for the lunar orbit insertion burn neared, the men in mission control concentrated on their displays.
Houston, Apollo 10, just tried looking out as far as I can out of the top hatch window. Still can't see the moon, but we'll take your word that it's there. Over.
It's there plus 60 miles.
No guarantee on that.
Apollo 10, Houston, 2 minutes to LOS. Everybody here says Godspeed.
Okay, and we'll see you right on the other side in orbit.
Roger.
LOS, loss of signal. The burn to place the spacecraft into lunar orbit would take place behind the moon, out of contact with Earth. Later, a second burn would make the orbit circular, 60 miles above the moon. The flight controllers waited for AOS, acquisition of signal.
We have AOS.
Hello, Apollo 10, Houston, over.
Roger, Houston, Apollo 10, you can tell the world that we have arrived.
How's the view, 10? Charlie, it might sound corny, but the view is really out of this world.
For the second time, 3 Americans orbited the moon. The electronic senses of Misfin, the manned spaceflight network, followed their flight, measuring precisely their orbital path. Information vital to the success of the first manned landing. On the first orbit, the crew turned the TV camera on the scarred lunar landscape.
See a crisis up here. That's the first real thing I'm positive of that I've seen that I recognize, and boy, it's really stands out.
Stafford, Young, Cernan. 250,000 miles from Earth. 60 miles above our desolate satellite.
Boy, this is really a rugged planet.
But also looking out at the horizon and some of the mountains we can see down here, that's going to be a real kick tomorrow down at 50,000 feet. Over.
We copy that.
Hello, Houston Apollo 10. We've got a beautiful view of the Earth here, but it's absolutely fantastic.
Now it was time for Lunar Module pilot Gene Cernan to crawl into the lunar module called Snoopy to check it out for the next day's descent. His evaluation?
And I personally am very happy with the fella, and I hope we can give you as good a report tomorrow. You bet your life. Hey, you watch Snoopy well tonight and make him sleep good, and we'll take him out for a walk and let him stretch his legs in the morning. Oh, okay.
The next day, Stafford and Cernan were in the lunar module, John Young in the command module called Charlie Brown. They checked out Snoopy for the last time. One of the items involved venting the tunnel connecting Snoopy and Charlie Brown to make sure that the spacecraft hatches did not leak.
Roger, I say again, we cannot get the tunnel to vent, over. Roger, understand, tunnel will not vent.
This was a real problem. The vent pipe seemed to be clogged. However, the hatch integrity was checked by reducing the pressure in the lunar module. The inability to reduce pressure in the tunnel also caused a 3 1/2 degree rotation between the two spacecraft. Not enough to endanger undocking, but for Apollo 11, it would be fixed.
Okay, Charlie Brown and Snoop, 3 minutes going over the hill. You'll go for undocking, and we'll see you around the other side.
Roger.
Roger.
The undocking took place behind the moon. When contact was reestablished, Snoopy and Charlie Brown were ready for the separation maneuver prior to descent. The word from John Young and Charlie Brown was,
You'll never know how big this thing gets when there ain't nobody in here but one guy. You'll never know how small it looks when you're as far away as we are.
Hey, John, if you get a chance, you can turn on the radar transponder and we'll correlate the VHF ranging with it.
Okay, my transponder is on. Transponder is on and the test switch is in operate.
I should be getting a radar signal here, and I sure don't.
an electronic piece of radar equipment in the command module was not functioning. Without it, there would be no rendezvous and no low-orbit descent in the lunar module to the moon. In mission control and in the two spacecraft, switch positions and procedures were rechecked. For the descent and subsequent rendezvous were the heart of the Apollo 10 mission. From mission control, one last-ditch instruction was sent up.
Roger, how about trying to recycle the power switch, Charlie Brown?
In the command module, Young turned the switch off, then on again.
Hey, that did it, you guys. It's on.
Hey, and I got signal strength, old buddy.
What do you know about that?
A little thing, a stuck switch, but for Apollo 11, it would be corrected.
Okay, Jose, say adios, and we'll see you back in about 6 hours.
Right. Have a good time while we're gone, Dave.
Yeah, don't get lonesome out there, John.
And don't accept any TEI updates. Charlie Brown. Brown, Houston, 45 seconds to LOS. You're still go for DOI.
DOI, descent orbit insertion, would come about 180 degrees from landing site 2, the primary site for Apollo 11. According to the inexorable laws of celestial mechanics, this burn of the lunar module descent engine would put Stafford, Cernan, and Snoopy less than 10 miles above the site. Once more in mission control, they waited for word from the moon.
Houston, Charlie Brown. They're down there among the rocks, mumbling about the boulders and things right now.
8 miles above the surface, 35,000 feet over the ancient hills. Then a communications problem. Contact with Snoopy was reestablished through Charlie Brown.
Hello, Houston, this is Snoopy. Right, Snoop, go ahead. We is going, we is down among them, Charlie. Roger, I hear you weaving your way up the freeway.
Roger, fantastic, Charlie, fantastic.
Right. Charlie, babe, that's fantastic, babe, really. We just can't believe what we're seeing. I tell you, Joe, this satellite of ours, this moon of ours, had a rough beginning somewhere back there. I tell you, we're down here where we can touch the top of some hills, though.
Then, one of the key aspects of the mission. Tom Stafford describes the landing site selected for Apollo 11.
Yeah, okay, the approach end looks a lot smoother than some of the orbiter photos show. It still estimate 25 to 30%, say semi-clear area, so if the LEM has enough hover time, at least from what we can see at 50,000 feet, it should not be a problem. Or if you come down in the wrong area and you don't have the hover time, you're going to have to shove off.
Now it was time to begin the rendezvous. On this first low orbit, they would make the initial burn to put Snoopy and Charlie Brown into the proper phase relationship for the coming maneuvers.
Okay, we're burning, John, we're burning.
Snoopy was now ready for the rendezvous sequence to be performed on the next orbit. Once more, they rounded the battered face of the moon.
Oh, Charlie, we just saw Earthrise, and it's got to be magnificent. Charlie, I don't know how the big man must see things, but if his view is any better than ours, it's got to be fantastic.
Before the actual rendezvous burns took place, the lunar module's ascent stage would have to be separated from the descent stage. But during the separation, something went wrong. Snoopy began to roll rapidly.
They're out of there, babe. And that's that last attitude. Snoop, Houston, we show you close to Gimmelock.
Yeah, okay, something went wild there on that staging. And we're all set. We didn't lock it. We're going to head to the Ottoman.
Charlie Brown, Houston, they got staging. They had a wild gyration, though, but they got it under control.
It was an unexpected system malfunction. Stafford and Cernan quickly had it under control. In fact, Tom Stafford and Gene Cernan were never in any kind of danger. But for a few seconds, they didn't know that. For Apollo 11, it would be found and corrected. Now, the rendezvous sequence came step by step. It was old hat for the veteran crew. In Gemini, Stafford had flown 5 rendezvous, Cernan 4, and Young 3. So Snoopy rose up from the moon to join Charlie Brown.
Hey, Joe, we're about ready to dock. Stand by.
Okay, John, you're into about 5 feet, babe. Looking beautiful. Hello, yes, Snoopy and Charlie Brown are hugging each other.
Roger that. We heard him down here.
But the day was not over yet. they still had to prepare the ascent stage and command module for their final separation.
We're all back in the command module. The tunnel's all locked up, and we're in attitude and standing by the SEP here when you give us the word.
And we can go ahead and separate now, Charlie Brown.
Okay, Houston, we'll give you a countdown. We're all set to go for SEP. Give you a 5 count. 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
Dan, when he leaves, he leaves. Yeah, it was right into the sun, babe. Right into the sun. Actually, like Tom said, there's a lot of people who did a good job, and I'll tell you, these vehicles so far, that little Snoopy was a real winner.
We concur.
And Big Charlie Brown has no slouch either.
The next day, Apollo 10 stayed in orbit around the moon. The orbital deviations of Apollo 10 were being determined with greater and greater precision. On board, there was more photography, more landmark tracking and navigation. With each revolution, the figures were being pinned down closer and closer in preparation for the arrival of Apollo 11.
Tell Jack Smith, there's some very interesting looking things that sort of look like volcanoes. There's one on the backside that if it was in a different setting, you could call it Mount Fujiyama.
I saw.
But now it was time to head home to Earth. Trans-Earth injection. The one burn of the mission that absolutely had to work. The burn that would push Apollo 10 out of its lunar orbit.
Everything looks good for TEI.
Roger, we'll go here, and we'll see on the way home.
Again, this most critical of all maneuvers would take place behind the moon, cut off from earthly contact.
Roger, Houston, we are returning to the Earth. Over.
Glad to have you on the way back home, 10.
For the last time, Apollo 10 watched the sapphire called Earth rise over a stark lunar horizon. And as they had throughout the mission, Stafford, Young, and Cernan shared with us the sights and feelings of their voyage through color television.
You guys are really hauling the mail out of there.
Oh, you better believe it. It's like we're climbing straight out, Joe. It's a fantastic sight. It's like we were shot straight out from the center of the moon.
You're going about 6,000 feet a second.
As the crew of Apollo 10 hurtled earthward, they decided to perform one more test. A test not in the original objectives of the mission, but a test that would solve a problem that had baffled space engineers for years.
Somebody finally came up with the idea of using a razor and brushless shaving cream.
That's amazing, 10. Absolutely. That's what the space age does for you.
I'll tell you, Charlie, that's one of the most refreshing things that's happened in the last couple of days. That was really great.
You guys really look good.
Down from the moon toward the coast of Earth, Apollo 10 sped on its incandescent path toward its dawn rendezvous at sea. Problems had been met, faced, and solved, for that was the mission of Apollo 10. To sort out the unknowns and pave the way. But as the men of Apollo 10 were reunited with their families and friends, attention was already turning elsewhere. Apollo 11 had been rolled out to its launch pad even before Apollo 10 had entered orbit about the moon. Now it stood, pointed toward a distant lunar sea.
which we're going to progress in the future is left to your imagination. But if we harness our energies and keep our perspectives right, the goals are unlimited.
Like a first generation of those films. I don't know whether spacecraft films, did they do any of those documentaries? I know they did a lot of films from the time, but the actual those documentaries, you imagine what they would have been like when they first produced them back in the day. Be really nice to see them. All right, so we're back. We're in 1969 now, so now it's time to go back. Just take a last look at their latest fashions. And we're back to 2019. Please take me back. Anyway, this is what we deal with. All right, so that's it. So thank you for that. That was Apollo 10. So the next meeting is in June, and as we discussed before, we're going to be having a look at the Lunar Orbit Rendezvous architecture, and Andrew Rennie's going to be taking that. So with that, we are going to be taking. How long do you think our break should be? Short break because we're way out of time. 10 minutes. Go and water the horses and all that sort of stuff. Okay, we'll see you back here in 10. keep things moving. If you want to come and grab your seats and get started, we're going to have our second half. I would like to welcome a special guest, Perry Vlahos from the Astronomical Society of Victoria. Perry is going to give us a quick rundown on this Star Show project. Perry, would you like to come up here and give us a rundown on that? If you want to stand over there, you go on the video screen. You can stand over here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Is that all right, Ashley? There you go.
Yep.
And that'll live stream out on YouTube. So if you stand here.
Here's fine. Excellent. Hi everybody, thank you for inviting me down, Peter, appreciate that, and I've recognised a few other faces in there. My name is Perry Vlahos. Some of you may or may not know that apart from being into astronomy, I used to be, still am, a musician, professional musician. In fact, in this very venue, my band did a residency every Friday night for about 18 months, I think. But it was a little bit different back in the day. The bar was closer to the street, then it was the band. Hang on. Yes, the bar, the band. And there was another bar between the band and the audience. It was a strange setup. But it was easy to get a drink after you finish your set. So that was the important thing.
What sort of music?
In that band, what did we do? There's been so many. My speciality was wrecking hotel rooms and deflowering groupies. That was the... anyhow, but my other love, of course, is astronomy, and I've been fortunate to participate in both of them throughout my life. And some time ago, up at Mount Burnett Observatory, when that was first set up, I met Matthew's partner. I understand Matthew Fagan was here a little bit earlier to give you the flyers. And we realised we're kind of kindred spirits because they liked astronomy, and Matthew is an incredibly good guitar player, better than me. He tunes by ear. I have to use my fingers. Anyway, that's a musical joke there, folks. Thanks for your support. And over the years, we've built up a good friendship, and we've always talked about doing something together that involved music and astronomy. And this is the first time that we've actually managed to get it together. So it will be at Deakin Edge on Saturday the 15th. Matthew and the orchestra will be providing the music. I'll be doing a fully illustrated talk before the show, and also during the show I'll be doing visuals to accompany the music. And the music for people our age should all be quite recognisable. There'll be music from War of the Worlds, there'll be Pink Floyd, music from 2001. Who did War of the Worlds again, Andrew?
Jeff Lynne.
No, it wasn't Jeff Lynne. That's what we found out. It was somebody else. Yes. Jeff Lynne was ELO. Yep. And a bit of music from Led Zeppelin, anything that relates to space and astronomy and spaceflight, I suppose, as well. So It promises to be a first in Australia, never been attempted before, and I think it'll be quite an interesting night. As Philip Brady said on 3AW last week when he interviewed us, he said, if you're not into guitar music, you can just watch the astronomical visuals, and if you're not into astronomical visuals, you can listen to the music and shut your eyes. So we've got both aspects covered. And I believe there's a better discount here than what there was at the Astronomical Society of Victoria. I think here you're getting 20%, and at the ASV they're only getting 20%. No, they're both the same, actually. That's about all I have to say on it, unless somebody has got some questions. Or
So ticketing's via your Eventopia?
Eventopia, yes.
Yeah. Eventopia.co, and just search up Star Show, yeah?
Yes, that's what it is, and make sure you get your discount. What else is there? Doors open at 7. The talk will be at 7:30 till 8:15, and I've prepared a special presentation for that, and hopefully everybody will learn something from it. And then the music will start at 8:30. Yeah.
Sounds great.
That's it.
Thank you for coming by.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We appreciate it.
Peter.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're going to get back into the space news with Angelo de Grazia.
Okay.
Using my best disco voice.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, welcome again. This is the April-May space news, and as usual, is this on, Michael? Yes. As usual, there's more news than what we have time for. Is it on? Yep. Give it a go. All right, the first one, we did mention it at the last meeting, but I thought I'd mention it again because it's worth just looking at this. But the Australian guys, the RMIT Hive, we've actually got a connection with these guys because they helped us out at RMIT. Sorry, I want to, got to put this right up to me mouth here. But the RMIT student-led rocket team Hive designed and built a rocket that just flew over 9 kilometres. I thought that was pretty good. It won this year's Australian University's rocket competition, Thunder Down Under. The engineering team leader and PhD student James Kirby, who actually gave us a presentation last year, leads the group, and he commented there to prove our unique capability at RMIT to launch scientific payloads to 30,000 feet. What's that in real numbers? 9 kilometres, is it? That is 9 kilometres. Fantastic. So we aim to double its target altitude with each consecutive year. So that'll be good to see. Hive has been had a huge success since its first launch in 2018, and they've actually won some competitions in the meanwhile, but they won the grand prize this year with that rocket that you can see there. And they actually did a little microgravity experiment in there as well. So, 9 kilometres is not much in the big scheme of things, not close to the Kármán line, but good achievement nonetheless. And of course, we have this bloke here, chief mentor, advisor, protagonist, whatever you like to call him, troublemaker, who's advised these guys on what to do. And so that's pretty good. And there you go.
3, 2, 1, ignition. There it goes.
Beautiful.
I wish I could see a little more enthusiasm around here.
And there you have it. Okay, so there you go. Well done, David. to your?
No, there was a great bunch of students, worked very hard, really well motivated, and they learned a lot along the way.
Hopefully, we'll see something bigger and better next year.
I think our future's in safe hands with young students like that. They're really good.
Excellent. Oh well. Anyway, some of the other stories.
No, I was up a place called Funny Farm, 4.5 hours west of Brisbane, in the middle of nowhere.
Very apt title.
Nearby.
Just a bit of news. Pamela Malroy has become a board member of the company Myriota. So they're an Australian company, but Malroy worked for DARPA and the FAA after leaving NASA, and will help the company implement some of those goals. She was also a pilot in the US Air Force and became the second woman to command the space shuttle. So, highly credentialed woman.
That's interesting because she's on the board of Gilmore's.
Is she really?
Which is funded by a venture capital company that funds Myriota's competition, which is Fleet Systems.
Correct.
So it's quite interesting that she's taken that role.
Taken an interest in Australian space.
Yeah.
Very good. Excellent. The other one was just a little bit on the square kilometre array. The Australian government continues to put in money into these type of ventures. I mean, in the golden age of Australian radio astronomy, back in the 60s, we were preeminent, but hopefully that advantage still persists to this day.
Australia still pours millions annually into optical astronomy too.
Yeah.
It does very well.
So it's good. It's good to see that these, certainly radio astronomy, and I wasn't aware that optical gets a lot of funding, but that's good if it does. Excellent. So I was surprised by this. They're going to spread 130,000 antennas over 65 kilometres in remote Western Australia.
They're aiming for 1 million.
Unbelievable. So that's another good effort from Australia.
Well, a square kilometre does amount to the area of all the dishes put together.
Amazing. Anyway, that's a lot of area. Moving on, across the Tasman, we've got Electron, Rocket Lab, launched from New Zealand, windiest part they could find. They launched recently. Shakiest part, yes. Apparently there's a sightseeing place there you can go to now. Is that right, Andrew?
Yes, but it's a long way.
A long way away. So you just see a little dot sort of rising into the distance. So the boat idea is still a good one, or they exclude you from getting a boat out there.
Even if you're close to an electron, it's still a little dot.
All right. Anyway, they deployed some small sats for the US Air Force. Again, they're showing great capability, and they want to fly these things quite rapidly. The next launch will actually have an Australian space satellite there too. 8 Crux 1. I know nothing about it unless somebody else does. So that's good. Good on Rocket Lab. Now, the big news for the month. NASA. The White House officially has sought $1.6 billion for NASA for this fiscal 2020 as a down payment for its 2024 human landing lunar lander effort. The budget would include $1 billion to start work on a lunar lander, because that's the part of the puzzle that has not yet been procured or designed. But it also accelerate the SLS. They've made a call that the SLS is the way they're going to the moon, and they've got to accelerate it because it's currently, first launch is set for 2021. It's supposed to be 2020 next year. And there's other little bits of money for technology development. The other issue is that they're going to scale down the Lunar Gateway, so by more than 300 million there. NASA said other programs would not be cut, and that's really good. So they decided to take the money out of this thing called the Pell Grant which is an educational program for college students experiencing financial difficulty. So that's where they're going to get their money from. So you can imagine what sort of support they will get in Congress over that little idea. And the point of this is, though, because there was rumours bandied around that they were looking for something like about $5 billion to $8 billion a year, and they've kept it deliberately low, but the point is that it is certainly on the low end of what they're going to need over the next 4 years to develop or to get to the moon again. Pretty unlikely. It'll do all the landers, it'll do all the, I mean, as he notes, the less money you get, the less chance you are of success. Surprise, surprise. Reason they're doing it is to, it's basically to Trump, if he gets another term, this is when he leaves office. So the idea is that they're going to try to do something spectacular. Sorry? And that's why they're doing all this. House members have also got reservations about all this. They're already arguing about it.
We put up a link a couple of weeks ago to a link to the House Sciences Subcommittee meeting, and I watched the first half hour of it. It's very interesting, and they're all on board in principle, but they want some serious answers to some serious questions. By the way, the lunar lander has a name. It's called Artemis.
I'll get to that.
Sorry,
you jumped the gun. All right, so again they've tried to cancel programs. Interestingly enough, every year they go through the budget proposal, and what happens is the government will give them more money than what NASA has required. That's happened again. However, they've done it again without reference back to that 1.6 million or billion to get to the moon. So some interesting dynamics, general stuff. NASA has found a ride for a demonstration of an inflatable heat shield, and it'll go up on a Vulcan rocket. It'll go up in 21 or early 22 with a co-NOAA payload. It'll ride this rocket. This rocket hasn't flown yet, by the way. It's been developed by ULA, and it looks something like that. It's Len's favourite way of getting to Mars, I think. It's a 6 metre diameter inflatable. So that's a good little trick. There's another one. If you watched Hidden Figures, you'll see her there, Katherine Johnson. They've actually named a computational research facility in her name. So, and I think she's over 100 now. So she's been around for a while. Used to do the hand calculations of orbits and how to get to the moon in the 60s. A pretty amazing woman, that's for sure. International Space Station. NASA and Roscosmos have finalised an agreement for 2 additional Soyuz seats. Sergei Krikalev, who some would know as an astronaut, a cosmonaut, I should say, is now in that role at Roscosmos. They've agreed to give the 2 seats, and of course no financial terms were discussed, but it really is just to cover or give some float to the commercial space. Getting astronauts off American soil is not quite going the way the Americans would like, and this is the only way they still are going to get to the space station, through the Russians. The other one is a long delayed Russian module. It's been delayed for years. Well, guess what? It's been delayed even further, and that's what the module looks like. Nuka. Don't know how to pronounce that. Wish Igor was here. Commercial crew. Okay, this is the interesting part of American spaceflight. Boeing.
No, it isn't.
Oh, I think it is.
Yes, it is. Not at all.
I'm doing the presentation and I like this stuff. Boeing are looking at doing the uncrewed flight test in August. They're talking about June to do a pad abort. Haven't heard any more about that. And end of 2019 to actually fly the first men from American soil since 2011 to the space station. The operational mission or the contracted mission would occur early next year.
8 years, the time it took to send people to the moon.
Pretty amazing, isn't it?
Fabulous.
There it is.
What an achievement.
There's Starliner sitting on top of its Atlas. And recently, an interesting test that was done, an integrated propulsion test, very similar to the Dragon one that occurred last month, and they passed with flying colours. If you recall, about a year ago, they had a leak, and that set them back a little bit of time. But they've got through this, which means they're on the path to launching their CST 100, and there's the Atlas booster that is being loaded for delivery to the Cape. Now, SpaceX, we remember demonstration mission 1, fantastic mission, everything went right. We had that Dragon module docked with the space station. We had the crew ready to go up probably this year. It was probably scheduled, I think it was August, and then this happened. They call it a Crew Dragon anomaly. I'd call it an explosion. Now, this happened some time ago, and they're still cleaning up Landing Zone 1 where that test occurred. They've still got some hazardous materials lying around. Clearly, the hypergolics are, you mix two chemicals come in contact with each other and they explode, basically, and that's what hypergolics are, and that capsule has it for its Draco thrusters, and that was a bit of a problem. So what is now happened is we have no idea what's going to happen with SpaceX. We still get the calls from NASA and SpaceX that we're looking into it and we're trying to fathom what happened. The only thing that's really come out of this, because everyone's kept really quiet, is that one of the SpaceX Hans Koenigsmann said that it wasn't the Dracos themselves, it was just before they were about to start to fire that something went wrong and that caused the explosion. So at the moment I have no idea what they're going to do. No one said anything about it. It really does put some real doubt on that capsule. And that was the day of the explosion, and that orange, I believe, represents some really nasty stuff. Hypergolic fuel just escaping into the atmosphere, and a lot of this stuff is really bad chemical. Okay, so they actually concluded that they could fly the CRS-17 mission with Dragon 1 version, because they're different plumbing inside and they don't have Super Dracos, so they allowed it to fly. Again, details were very scarce. To add to the problems, there's been talk about parachute anomalies. SpaceX were testing the parachutes, something went wrong, the thing landed a little bit harder, so NASA are into them about that, but Boeing had similar issues with their parachutes, so the whole commercial crew thing is not looking very positive at the moment. Alright, I'll just keep moving on. Space Launch System, there it is, with the Orion. Not so long ago, NASA was reassessing what they were going to do, and they've been trying to overcome all the challenges, but the truth is they have delayed significantly, mainly due to this core section. This is the hydrogen section. They've got an oxygen tank that mates with this and creates the core. So once that delay had been kind of addressed, the bombshell was that NASA administrator said, let's use commercial vehicles and let's get this exploration mission 1 going with commercial vehicles. When he said that, everything erupted, and because the Space Launch System is very much the government's rocket, and as soon as he threatened to move away from it because of the delays that Boeing were incurring, all hell broke loose. So he proposed a number of things. One of the reviews was get a Falcon Heavy and stick your rocket on top of that. The problem is the flight of the EM1, Exploration Mission 1, is supposed to happen next year. There's no way they could develop such an integration with such a rocket. It's possible, but very unlikely. But again, didn't have the support from Congress. So again, NASA said, oh, there was another initiative. They were trying to get rid of what's called the green run test. What it is you put the rocket in a stand like the old Saturn V's, and you fire all the engines all in one go, and you do it on a test stand. They were thinking of getting rid of that test, and everyone advised them, don't do it, you're crazy. So they've gone back to two things. They're going to do the green test, they're going to put some more money to try to accelerate the program, and they're going to use SLS to go to the moon.
$4 billion over budget.
Oh, I don't even hazard to guess.
The SLS core stage.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. The amount of money they're throwing at the SLS is amazing. I think to date they probably, with Orion, I'm not sure of the number, but it's going to be in that sort of $20 billion range. It's a huge amount of money. One thing that will happen, we will have a centre abort test, and that's coming up very soon, of the Orion, and that will happen possibly next month, and that's what it's going to look like. It's like reminiscent of the Little Joes when they used to test the Apollos back in the 60s. This is the same type of test, and they will be testing the abort. Very sophisticated abort system, I might tell you. All right, quickly into Lunar. How are we going for time, Mike?
Keep going.
The Lunar exploration. Okay, and here it is, Len. NASA names a new moon landing program Artemis after Apollo's sister. That's the brother, that's the sister. Half a century after NASA went to the moon, under Project Apollo, the space agency is now working to land men and women on the lunar surface as part of the Artemis program. It turns out that Apollo had a twin sister. I didn't know this. Artemis, and she happens to be the goddess of the moon. Pretty cool, said Bridenstine recently, referring to Greek mythology. Our astronaut office is very diverse and highly qualified, and so I think it is very beautiful that 50 years after Apollo, the Artemis program will carry the next man and the first woman to the moon. So that's pretty cool. So that Exploration Mission 1, you can see the sort of weird profile of its flight, will now be called Artemis 1. Lunar exploration, more of it. NASA recently updated a call for its proposals for lunar landers. It's now ramping up all this lunar lander technology, and this particular one was to really, the initial proposal was for upper or ascent stages, but they've kind of broadened it to include integrated lander concepts. So this is amongst a number of initiatives that are occurring at NASA right at the minute. And one part of those will be things like the Lockheed Martin small lander concepts. But NASA, again, continuing on trying to promote this lunar landing, has awarded to 11 companies for initial studies and prototypes development of lunar lander concepts. The awards are part of this Next Step program, and they've awarded $45.5 million, and each company will be required to contribute 20%. This is part of this public-private partnership that NASA seems to be embarking on big time. The 6-month effort will focus on descent stages, transfer vehicles and refueling elements, critical to the way they are going to go to the moon. The 11 companies selected represent a broad cross-section of the commercial space industry. We've got Aerojet, Blue Origin, Boeing, Dynetics, Lockheed Martin. Usual suspects are all there. Maxar, we'll get back to them in a minute. Northrop Grumman, Orbit Beyond, Sierra Nevada, and I was surprised, SpaceX. So they will be giving advice on descent stages and transfer vehicles and things like refueling tugs and things like that. Pretty exciting stuff, but again, early days. The next thing was they've just awarded to Maxar Technologies, which is Space Systems Laurel, a contract to build the first element of its lunar gateway. They are dead set going with this lunar gateway. A lot of people have argued of direct ascent and landing on the moon, but nope, NASA will do it this way. But they'll do it with a scaled down gateway. So 375 million fixed price contract, pretty good. Covers the development, launch into space and testing of this PPE, power and propulsion element.
They're not going to give much for that money, would they?
Hey?
They're not going to give much for that money.
Yeah, I'll show you. Maxar will base the spacecraft on its 1300 series bus. So these guys already build satellite buses, so they've got, good credentials. NASA said it selected Maxar over several other companies because of its technical capabilities and abundant value to NASA. So that's probably a cheap price, right? Maxar has Blue Origin and Draper as partners. That's an interesting thing because they have to launch it for NASA. They have to actually trial it, and if it succeeds its trials, it will then get handed to NASA for use. This is the kind of new model of how they're going to procure various elements of this Moon initiative. Interestingly enough, Maxar didn't announce the launch provider, but it's got to be Blue Origin, doesn't it, on the New Glenn rocket. According to NASA, only one other element, a docking habitation node, is now expected for the gateway. So the gateway now comprises of two bits, the PPE and the docking and habitation node. That's it. That's what the PPE looks like, big solar array. And that is the minimum gateway and lander configuration. There's the Orion. You'll see that you've got the PPE there. You've got this little docking adapted down the back and a bit of a habitation. And below that, you'll see a lander. And that looks like a tug to me. That's the configuration that they expect to go to the moon with. So despite this announcement, companies still argue that there needs to be more work done to plan and procure this stuff. So NASA called for development of minimal gateway featuring the power. We spoke about that. Other companies are basically saying you've got to get on and start awarding these other habitat modules. There's some testing a number of companies are doing in America at the moment of habitat modules. That'll come to fruition later in the year, and from that basis they'll pick one of the contractors and they'll start manufacturing and building that as well. So the strategy, a long-term NASA plan foresees more than 3 dozen launches to the moon through to the end of 2028. So it'll be a busy time. There's many, I'll show you the chart in a sec. Of these, the missions and the rest commercial, including robotic landers, commercial landers, there's a whole series, there's a big strategy to get to 2024. Notably absent, again, is the overall... Here it is. There it is. This is the roadmap. And you'll see that it starts off with the launch abort and it moves on to EM1 or Artemis 1. And that's, again, that 2020, end of the year. They're really pushing hard for that. And that's unmanned to the moon. And then EM2 will be in 2022. This will be the sort of Apollo 8 rerun, if you like. And you'll notice there's other things happening down here. You know, a lot of unmanned stuff going back to the moon and a few rovers. You've got commercial launch vehicles launching the habitat module and a few bits. And then finally in 2024, you get the SLS launching the men after you've launched 3 commercial launch vehicles, each of which carries a component part of the lunar lander. They obviously put it all together, and then they dock with the gateway. These guys turn up at the gateway and they go and land on the moon. So it's one thing you know about this line, it ain't going to happen this way.
Because they assemble in lunar orbit.
They will assemble a lot of this in lunar orbit, yeah. I don't know if these ones...
To quote an eminent rocket scientist from the movie The Castle, tell them they're dreaming.
So anyway, that's the... And the idea is to 20... If you remember, the previous target was 2028 to achieve this 2024 deadline. So what happens to 2028? They're talking about having habitats and permanent presence on the moon. Wow, be fantastic. That's interesting. For NASA internal use only. Oh, we're pretty close to NASA, aren't we?
It's also pre-decisional.
Pre-decisional means they've committed to none of this. Now, interesting, this bloke, Mark Angelo, that's what I call him, but I think they pronounce that name slightly differently. He headed up Sierra Nevada for a long time, and last time we spoke, we said he was going to take the reins and he was going to lead development of revised plans of getting to the moon and create a new mission directorate within the agency. Well, a month and a half later, he's gone. He's left. Reason that Bridenstine remarked was that he opted to pursue other opportunities after Congress rejected a proposal to reorganise the agency and create a Moon to Mars mission directorate. A lot of the politicians were saying, what the hell you need this stuff for? And because they cancelled it, said, no, we're not going to create this directorate. He said, well, no point me hanging around, and so he left. I think he was a pretty decent sort of bloke, but anyway. There's a couple of pictures of lunar gateways. These were all possibly 2028 pictures. We've got lunar landers. Lockheed Martin's done a lot of work on that. And if you recall, Grumman, before the awards for the Apollo lunar landers, they'd done a lot of work, pre-work, that set them up to win the award to actually build the lunar modules. So I think Lockheed Martin sees itself in that mould. Why? Well, they build the Orion capsule, so they...
It's supposed to be Orion.
Yeah. Well, they had a couple of... this particular one, that's the full-blown version, but they've got some minimal versions that is more based on Orion stuff. So they had the full-blown versions and the get to 2024 versions of these things, but they still look expensive and heavy landers. And of course, this bloke came out during the month, Mr. Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin, and said, have I got something for you? And he offered Blue Moon. Blue Moon is a lander. It comes in two sizes. The 3.6 tons to the lunar surface, it'll carry 3.6 to the surface, or 6.5 manned version to the surface, using a new I can't even say the word. You know what I mean? BE7 engine. It's a new engine that they're developing. He's been developing this for 3 years now, so he reckons he's well placed to provide that service to land on the moon. And with his money, he's probably the most credible of all the participants in this little game. Oh, I wanted to mention Israel. As you know, Bereshit kind of crash landed on the moon, and there it is, not very big. NASA reckons they're going to try, as you know, they're going to have another go, and NASA wants to be part of it. They were part of the first one, but it's all in pieces. But we had some pictures from Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and 11 days after the crash, and there they are. Here, nice clean, and there's a little bit of a streak there. No crater, but they found it. So it still never ceases to amaze me how they find all these crashed probes, even on Mars. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter does exactly the same thing. They actually secured some more funding. I don't know what a thing like that would cost. Anyone have a guess at how much a thing? But they've won some X Prize money, if you like, and some money to keep the thing working. So it's good. It's good that someone else is having a crack at the moon. Planetary, very quick. I don't want to steal Andrew's thunder, but send your name to Mars. All right. So if you want to, you can send your name to Mars. I'm accumulating what's traveller points up here, and because I've actually had my name on a few spacecraft, Insight and Orion and a few others, but I did this. And when I got on this, I think there were about 200,000 people had registered their name. If you go on there now, it's probably about 4 million, but they'll put your name on a microchip and you'll...
Will
Yeah, they do. Yeah, well, you know, they say they will. SpaceX. Well, CRS-17 launched. No drama. It launched, it was a B5, Block 5, Falcon 9, and it didn't blow up. It went, I mean the Dragon, that is. There it is. It was I don't know why they always have night launches. There's a lot of night launches. Must be something to do with the orbital mechanics of the ISS. But Starlink, here's another one. About 2 weeks later, they launched Starlink, and that was the third flight of that particular booster. Pretty amazing. And they reused fairings for that mission, and they launched 60 satellites, and it was and they landed back on the barge, so everything worked well. The 60 satellites are to provide high-speed internet services across the world. So this was the first of the missions. Now they're expecting to put up 12,000 satellites. Elon reckons 1,000 satellites is the point when Starlink becomes economically viable. Limited services could begin with as little as 420 satellites or 7 launches. So that's interesting. But if you want to know how he's going to fund his new rocket, this is how he plans to do it with Starlink. Sell internet services around the world with a lot of satellites. They're all low. They orbit very low, and they when they re-enter, they will all burn up, but there'll be a hell of a lot of them. You buy yourself a little ground terminal, size of a medium pizza, he says. It's just a little dish that will receive the signals. So you can put that on top of your roof, and you have got internet service that will probably beat the NBN and anything else we've got. I don't know what the pricing structure will be like, but next few years we'll see it. There we had it. And there it is. That's what it looks like. And this is the Starlink. The way they deployed them was really quite simple. They got the booster, the satellites were all sitting on top. They rotated the booster, and centrifugal force just pushed them all out. And all 60 satellites just slowly drifted away. See all those slats? They're satellites. Slowly drifted away, and they slowly but surely they're starting to part now. And that's what it'll sort of look like. And a few days after launch, they're low magnitude, so they're not, you can still see it, but you have to know what you're looking for. And but there they are, a string of all the satellites just going along their orbit. It'll be amazing when you get 12,000 of these things. The astronomers are already up in arms, as you can imagine. but as Elon's tweeted tonight, he said, look, you know, we've got 5,000 satellites in orbit around the Earth now. He said, and how much impact do they have to astronomy? Near enough to zero. These all be in a similar vein because they're very low magnitude. Now, the big one. Okay, this is what he's building. This is his Dragon 9. This is Starhopper, Starship, and a Super Heavy. That is very near testing. That is being built in 2 places. I'll come back to that. That, he reckons, will start being built in about 3-4 months' time. Elon time. That could be, you know, a year or 2 away, but it'll be pretty quick. So, SpaceX Cocoa Beach. There's the new facility. It's building a second Starship prototype. This one on the US East Coast, Mark 1, Mark 2 version. As you know, they're building one in Boca Chica in Texas. So recent images showed the second prototype of the company's next generation vehicle under construction in Florida. And someone asked him, how are you going to get this big beast, that, to the Cape to launch? And he said horizontally. It's a 9-metre diameter rocket. It's going to be amazing to see if he gets this horizontally, because he's not far from the Kennedy Space Centre. I think he's probably about 8 k's away. He has to truck it up the freeway there and then across the bridge into the Kennedy Space Centre. So it'll be something to see when he does it. And there it is. He's bought a big factory and he's building bits and pieces of this. There it is.
Where's that in relation to other things?
I tried to get a map and I've seen it. I'll get one for next time. But it's down the Cocoa Beach side. You know, when you cross the bridge across to Kennedy, it's down further south, probably about, or I'd say about 3 or 4 kilometres, just slightly inland. So it's pretty close.
So all the Falcon stuff he makes now in California, he has to ship that down via the Panama Canal and then back up again.
Does he?
There's no other way.
I thought he was trucking most of that stuff.
He trucks it.
All the Falcon 9s are trucked.
Oh
yeah.
I thought they were brought by sea. The
No,
first ones were brought by sea.
Early days, remember when he bought that land down at the dock at the, he was planning of using the Panama Canal, but he dropped that. And they went for actually building it in situ. The one at Boca Chica is being built right on the launch site, pretty much. The one in Florida, he has to travel, do a horizontal traverse up the roads to the pad 39. They're talking about actually adding a little add-on to pad 39A. You know, where he launches his Falcon Heavies and his Falcons at the moment, just next to that for the Starships. So there's a lot of thinking going on in this. Mind you, the thing that just shocks me, if anything, is the quality of work. Now I know it's a prototype, and if it blows up, he's not going to lose a lot of money out of it. But it's still, I would have thought that, you know, the quality really needs to be top notch for these type of vehicles.
And it's stainless steel.
It is stainless steel, absolutely. And see, one of the things I keep thinking is how are they going to do this this punctured heat shield where they, you know, ooze out methane or whatever they have to give a layer to give. They're not doing anything like that with these prototypes, so I don't know when they're going to test that type of technology. So there's a lot of questions in all this, but Elon never ceases to surprise, that's for sure.
So if it's not stainless steel, what might it could be?
When he first started, he was going to use carbon fibre material, and he dropped that for a number of reasons. Carbon fibre doesn't like cold liquids. They tend to crack and not behave very well. While stainless steel, the colder it gets, the better it gets. Everyone uses the carbon fibre material because it's fit for purpose of disposable type rockets. But when you start to look at reusable rockets, all of a sudden you start to analyse stainless steel, and it really does come up, and it's got a lot of pluses to it.
What's the weight difference?
It is heavier, there's no doubt about it, but the rocket engines, if the Merlins that are flying, the Merlin engines that fly on his Falcon 9 at the moment are probably twice the thrust of the early versions of those engines. He's got the Raptor. The Raptor is an amazing engine, make no mistake. They will develop that engine, so whatever thrust it's pulling now, they will increase the levels of that particular engine. So weight doesn't really become a problem to them.
I'm speculating though that one of the reasons they're going away from the large carbon fibre liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen tanks was the problem they had with the carbon fibre overwrapped helium pressure vessels in the Falcon.
That's part of it.
Because the belief now is that the reason they had the explosion was when there was thermal contraction and expansion, that the carbon fibres themselves, individual fibres snapped.
Yep.
And there was enough energy released in the presence of liquid oxygen
spark
to cause a spark.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Which is pretty bizarre.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the hopper. This is the one that everyone's been sitting there waiting for the engines to be delivered. and it's probably 3 engines. As we speak, they've actually built 5 engines, and they're well on their way to building a number of. And that should be coming any day now, because they were talking about having a flight of this on the 28th over the next, 28, give it another week, maybe they'll be there. You can see that it's, they haven't really paid attention much to how it looks. But I've seen rust on this thing. I've seen some of the craziest welds ever. But look at this for scale. They've just put some feet on it because to take the loads when it lands. It's a monster. It really is. And there it is, venting some gas. This was an early version before the nose blew off. And this is when they had one Raptor engine in there, or that was just a dummy. And then the nose fell off in a wind, and that was the end of that. So progress continues, and this is now Starship, right? So they've got the hopper on one side of the facility, and they're putting together the hopper, which is this thing. The Starship. And they were going to put the nose cone on, and there it goes. And it's a bit ordinary. The guy that's putting this together, as I understand, is a water tank manufacturer, good with water tanks and stainless steel.
You
So
see that shows Scrappy Challenge? Nothing of that.
And now you'll notice something in this picture, and lo and behold, it doesn't fit. So there'll be a little bit of panel beating and a bit of cutting and welding, and they'll make it fit. Remember, it's only an aerodynamic shape, but this is not really necessary, because it's the tanks and the engines below it that will do the testing.
It could also be the biggest aerospace hoax that's ever been pulled as well.
In plain sight.
In plain sight.
Boy, I tell you.
It'll be next to the big pineapple.
The big Starship.
This is the space goose of the space race.
Yeah, and here it is at Boca Chica getting built. This is the bottom bit, right? Oh, you just saw the top bit. This is the bottom bit, and there is a sort of a concrete surround, and they put the engines in from underneath, and they're going to stack it all together, and there you have it. You've got a rocket. Pretty. I can't believe this. You probably have the best theory so far, Dave. This is the Starship orbiter. This is the facility back in March. This is in April. They were building bits and pieces. And then late April, they poured this big slab here. And lo and behold, a few weeks later, they've got a factory. It is not a vertical integration factory or anything like that. It'll be obviously a horizontal production line of maybe sections of the stainless, where they build them there, and then they put them together outside.
Maybe they're going to make that the hop thing, hop the shed.
Oh, blow if I know, but that's gone up so quick, and amazing. So other bits I'm just trying to see. Oh, SpaceX has actually challenged the US Air Force over an award, and what it's about is that SpaceX have been precluded from tendering for this work because they were deemed to be high risk. Now they proposed Falcon Heavy, Falcon, which flies, and Starship. However, the ones that got the gig, these are rockets that haven't flown yet. We've got the Vulcan. We've got Blue Origin's, New Glenn. They were the ones that got the gig. So I think Elon is within his rights to complain about this, and so he has. He's put in a lawsuit against the Air Force. I'm not sure how wise politically that really is, to bite that hand that feeds you, but hey, it's not fair on him.
Well, this is the second time.
Yeah, exactly right. And he's at least got flight-proven hardware. The others have no flight-proven hardware. The Japanese billionaire, remember him? He's run out of money.
He's now a millionaire.
Well, look, he was worth 1.4 billion, and he's gone down 50%. So he's probably only worth about, $700 million. But he's kind of saying he's selling all his stuff, and I think he's getting a bit of cold feet. Maybe after he saw that video of the dragon going into smithereens. Anyway, the other one was this is an interesting article. The US Department of Justice alleged that SpaceX supplier faked inspection reports for critical rocket parts on 10 missions. This is serious stuff. The company that's no longer PMI Industries, there's a number of people involved, but one guy gets the rap. But it's a really amazing thing, because producing substandard products, to SpaceX, who launches government payloads, is not a good thing. So you'll hear more about it. But Ash came up with a really good theory that maybe Dragon 2 has some of these parts from companies such as this. So it's an interesting theory. Oh, look, I'm Blue Origin. I think I've covered most of this. I'm not going to talk about this one here. That's New Glenn, by the way. Big rocket. Strato launch. As you know, Paul Allen, who was the prime mover on Strato launch, died not so long ago. He died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma at the age of 65. He funded development of Spaceship One, and he was building this Strato launch. The issue is, once he died, the question was, what's going to happen to Strato launch? Well, not long thereafter, this is the plane itself. Not long thereafter, they cancelled a number of rockets that they were producing. They did, all these developmental rockets have been cancelled, and that flight, they recently had a flight of this thing, could have been the last one. They're trying to sell this, so I'm told, and to someone that could use it. SpaceX maybe? I don't know. And so unfortunately, with his passing, I think so will this vision. I won't play this. This one caught my attention the other week. Reaction engines. These guys have been working on this engine for a very long time. When do you want me to stop?
Half an hour ago.
Sorry, seriously, I'll finish this one. Reaction engines. They've been working on this thing for a long time. It's the Sabre synergetic air-breathing rocket engine. Essentially, it takes in air and it uses that air to... We'll see the engine in a minute. They've actually had... There it is. This is a chiller, and it actually liquefies... or it cools the air a lot, and they can actually use it in the rocket engine. This could be a single stage to orbit if built. They've actually got past some of its design phases, and it would be amazing if they actually get this thing off the ground. There's a number of people funding it. The United Kingdom government, the Americans are funding it, and it's serious business. They're about to start producing a demonstrator that will fire in the next year or two. So it'll be something to watch. This will be the promise of, Melbourne to London in 45 minutes. It won't be, because, well, it could be. It could be.
If it gets an automatic facelift.
It's a big rocket, but pretty amazing. Oh, look, I won't play this. I'll play this another time. That's it. Thank you.
It's
Andrew.
got SpaceX involved. It's just one of those.
All right, he's ready to go.
It is changed, just do some changes.
Okay.
Yes. No one, everyone wants that. No one wants to. They work there because.
Sorry.
As Gene Kranz occasionally said, lock the doors, no one can leave. Okay, I'm only going to show you one thing because we've run out of time. There is a European satellite, or a series of satellites called Sentinel, and Earth remote sensing satellites. Australia has, the National Map Agency of the Australian Government, has an agreement with the program that runs the Sentinels that we buy the data and can access it. And you can do all sorts of amazing things with it. Now, I'm not sure what's going to happen here because we tried it before and it worked. Okay, this is a picture of Uluru. And
Click OK in the middle of that, down the bottom.
okay, right, gotcha. And what you can do is look at this picture, which is taken pretty much vertically, and you can move it around. You can move forward, away from it, towards it, and you can also change the viewpoint as well. There's a zoom there. So maybe that's the one. So so I'm used to doing it on a different computer and it works. I did.
Oh, you did?
I did. Okay. You can also, you can call in all sorts of data, infrared data, and different sensors. And now it wants to, don't do that. But what I wanted I just wanted to draw your attention to it. This is an example of the data that they've done, but you can do your own from all sorts of different parts of Australia, and it comes in almost real time. So you can get the data within hours of the pass over Australia. Now, one little curious thing which I did want to show, if I can get a vertical view. Thanks, Ashley. Okay, get me vertical. That's it. Good. Excellent. Let's just stop there. I don't know how many of you have been to Uluru, but in the days of the Azaria, remember her? The road used to just drive straight in. In fact, when you stood on the top of it, you could see the road there. I can't see any evidence of it there now, but the road used to go straight in, which meant that if you're on a coach coming in there, if you're in the front couple of seats, you could see Uluru coming up ahead. But anyone further back in the bus, all they could see is just the spinifex on the side, and suddenly you'd be there and get out of the bus, oh, there's Uluru. Now, when they redid the road, I'll just try and back out a bit, if I can do it not too badly. Nowadays, when you come in on the road here, the road does a curve right around there, which means that you see Uluru out the side windows of your coach. And everyone, even if they're sitting on the wrong side of the coach, gets a view of Uluru, and it approaches, and it's quite a magical thing. And I think that's one of the most brilliant pieces of roadway design ever done in Australia. Okay, so that's when you come in on this Uluru road here, and you come in, and you get round to the point where people start climbing it. Well, they're going to shut it down in a few weeks' time, I believe. So, so that's available, it's free online. You don't need any special software, it works in your browser, and you can have a lot of fun playing around with that.
What are the cities like, Andrew?
What are they?
Cities like?
What are
Have
the
they taken
cities
pictures
like?
of the cities?
They haven't done any of the samples. They've only got about 3 or 4 samples here. I haven't got the actual web page. No, it didn't go up. All right, let's forget it. I was going to show you the actual website. It comes up with this thing which is loading globe, and it takes a minute or two to load, and then you're into it. Okay, so it's quite wonderful, and you can call in data from all the different sensors and so on, and and mix that in. So that's how it loads in. And we haven't got the best internet connection here, so it actually works quite closer than that. So you can have a good play around of it. It's really good fun. So that's available. All right. Yeah. Well, that's all we've got time for tonight. So my half-hour presentation, 0.
Andrew.
Okay, well, we have come to the end of the night. It's a little almost 10:15. Sorry for the late night. Thanks everyone for participating, and we'll hopefully see you again in at our next meeting, which will be, I can't remember the date.
June 24, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds right. June the 24th, so the 4th Monday in June, and we look forward to seeing you then. So thanks very much.